I've read a lot of books in my life. I love to read. Everybody loves a story. And I read No Other Name because Ed is a friend. But we met him just shortly after Loretta went home to be with the Lord. So we didn't get to meet her. I didn't get to meet her. But I read the book. And it's quite a story. It is a love story. It's a story of faith. It's a story of facing fear, facing cancer. But it's a story of devotion of Loretta's life and Ed's, their marriage, and just the faith walk that they took through a journey with cancer. I was greatly impacted by what Ed and Loretta both wrote about their kind of their journey through the belief system regarding healing. What I read in the beginning of the book, the beginning of the story, was much different than how it ended up in the kind of the journey God took them on through their beliefs. And I think what most impacted me personally is where Ed talks about healing. Not, it is theological, but what they learned personally about healing is that it doesn't come from the heavenlies and fall upon the physical body from an outside source. It actually is born out of your relationship with God when you're walking in fellowship with the Holy Spirit. So it isn't like a tangible thing that falls down on you. It's not an outside job, it's an inside job. And I knew the moment I read it that it was true, and it impacted my belief system and quite a bit. Loretta talks in the book about things she learned about herself and her relationship with God, and verses come to mind that stood out to her as she battled cancer and stayed devoted to God and grew in her faith in the midst of sickness, disease, miraculous healing, and then the return of sickness and disease. I remember one passage where there had been a miraculous, medically documented healing, and Loretta, a few years later, was walking in the door of her home. Ed was standing there, visibly shaken and really broken, and the children were in another room, and they too were shaken, and Ed could hardly get the words out. He had been on the telephone, and all I could say was Jeff. Jeff was a family member, and Loretta immediately assumed Jeff had been in an accident or something had happened. But Loretta's doctor was also a Jeff, and he had called Ed to share with him that the cancer had returned. And Ed was having to share with Loretta that the cancer had returned. And Ed broke down and just completely just sat broken before her. And she was able to be strong and comfort him. And just the relationship in their marriage was just beautiful in that Ed was very strong for Loretta when she needed that. But there were also moments when Ed was very weak, and Loretta was there for him and for the children. Loretta stood on Romans 4:19, which talks about the promise God had made to Abraham and that he would give him a child. And Romans 4:19 talks about the faith Abraham had, and it says, Abraham did not consider his own body, which was dead, but he held to the promises of God. And I'm sure I read that passage many, many times, but it took on new life reading it in light of a person who is walking through 20 years of cancer and eventually succumbs to it. the moments that Ed realized that Loretta really belongs to God, and that once she is with God, she would be pain-free and really reached the ultimate goal we all strive for, and our hope is in heaven. That's what our hope is in. And the moments that he realized standing in church with her, singing with his arm around her, that he talks about having a vision from God and seeing that she was with Jesus pure, yet she was standing there by his side. That was very meaningful, that he was able to kind of process through that and realize that she belongs to God and emotionally release her to be free. God's timing is always perfect, and Ed sent the book, and I was able to read it one weekend, and I finished it on a Sunday, and the very next day, a friend of mine who's walking through cancer contacted me and asked me if we could get together for a cup of coffee that week, and we did. And I thought how interesting the timing was, in that I had just finished the book, and Ed and Loretta's feelings on and beliefs on healing and where that comes from and how it works, as well as the verse in Romans 4:19, that talks about Abraham not considering his own body, but rather the promises of God. I thought those were things I might share with her, and I was able to do that week. And she asked me if she could read the book, and I took it to her, and she relayed to me that just in the short time she's been walking through her cancer, there are feelings, thoughts, and emotions she has not been able to put words to. But reading the book and reading what Ed went through, and Danielle and Benjamin and Nathan, Ed and Loretta's kids, and things God took Loretta through herself, put the words to what my friend Cheryl had been feeling, and she was able to express to her husband and her daughter some of these things that she hadn't before that time. So the book is impacting others who have cancer, who have other sickness, diseases. This story is specific to cancer, but I really believe it transcends that. It talks about healing, and that can be physical healing, spiritual healing. It offers hope in the face of great fear of the unknown, fear of death. It shows that God is God no matter what your circumstances are, that He is great. And it really is a beautiful story of a couple's devotion to God no matter what. They trusted God when Loretta was diagnosed with cancer. They trusted Him when He healed her from cancer. And they continued to trust Him when cancer returned. God is God, and He is sovereign, and He is never looking the other way when we receive a diagnosis or any sort of bad news, or when we're walking through the fire.
Hi, I'm Pastor Chuck Reich. I'm the executive producer at Horizon Media Studios. It's a 501c3 media ministry, and what we're doing is helping other ministries tell their story. Homeless shelters and children's homes, Bible colleges, seminaries, mission sending agencies. With your help, we can continue to help tell their story, to inspire the world, to shine their light, and let God get the glory for the work that's being done in advancing the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Thanks again for praying for us.